Hey guys, today we're taking a look at Donnie Darko, a cult classic movie from 2001. Enjoy. The movie opens with a boy mysteriously passed out in the middle of the road. He awakens, dazed and confused, then gets back on his bike and heads home. There's a message on the fridge waiting for him. Where's Donnie? Later in the evening, him and his family have dinner. Donnie's sister, Elizabeth, talks about school. She's on the midst of being accepted into Harvard. She really has her shit together, unlike Donnie. Donnie is quite hostile, making rude remarks towards both his sisters. Elizabeth becomes a bit aggravated, and Donnie retorts that maybe she should be the one in therapy instead of him. She counters, passive-aggressively asking him why he hasn't been taking his medication. Apparently, she wasn't supposed to know that. They proceed to fling profanities at each other until their mother steps in to break it up. After dinner, Donnie's mom enters his room and asks him where he's been going at night. Donnie aggressively asks her to get out, and she asks what happened to her son. He calls her a bitch as she walks off. She heads back to her room, and her husband consoles her. Donnie takes his medication, then goes to sleep. During the night, an ominous voice in Donnie's head awakens his subconscious. He gets up and sleepwalks outside as the voice draws him in, closer and closer. A man in a demonic-looking bunny costume is seen in the distance. He tells him that the world is going to end in 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, and 12 seconds. Donnie smirks in disbelief. Elizabeth arrives at the home at the dead of night. Suddenly, things start to shake as the house seemingly breaks apart. Donnie's father awakens as Elizabeth cowers in fear. The next morning, Donnie is woken up by his two neighbors. He apologizes for passing out on their golf course and heads home. He's greeted by the unpleasant sight of police and a ton of people at his house. They refuse to let him pass until he firmly asserts that this is his home. He watches in awe as a jet engine is hoisted out of his room. Had he been there, it would have definitely spelled death for the troubled teen. The FAA is there. They've arranged a hotel for the family while things are taken care of. Elizabeth smiles and tells Donnie that they have no idea where the engine came from. No plane was found. Back at the hotel, Donnie's parents reminisce about the tragic death of one of their high school classmates. They remark somberly on the fact that Donnie nearly shared the same fate. We're treated to a little montage of high school life before settling in with Donnie in class. His English teacher, Miss Pomeroy, questions the class about a short story called The Destructors. Donnie chimes in and gives an excellent answer, stating that destruction is a form of creation. Suddenly, a girl, Gretchen, enters the classroom. She just registered to the school. Miss Pomeroy playfully instructs her to sit next to the boy she finds the cutest. Of course, it's Donnie, who's played by Jake Gyllenhaal. Gretchen proudly claims her seat from another girl. On the ride home from school, Donnie and his father briefly discuss the plane incident. It remains a mystery where the engine came from. Donnie shouts and his dad abruptly stops the car. He nearly ran over an old woman. Donnie steps out to check on her as she inspects an empty mailbox. She whispers something too quiet for us to hear to Donnie. At therapy, Donnie shares with his therapist, Dr. Thurman, that he made a new friend, an imaginary one named Frank. He tells her that he told him the world was going to end, but he doesn't believe it. The next day at school, Donnie zones out while watching some goofy video about fear from a local motivational speaker. Frank begins to speak to him, telling him to pay close attention. Later that night, Donnie has visions of the future before awakening again in a trance-like state. Frank stands before him, but says nothing. Donnie grabs an axe and bludgeons a water main as Frank watches from the shadows. The next morning, Donnie teases his little sister while waiting for the bus. Some other students run up, alerting the group that school is canceled today. There's been a flood. I wonder who's responsible. We cut to the scene of the crime. Students are gossiping about what happened, and we see that an axe was left embedded on a statue, accompanied by the words, "They made me do it." Gretchen is seen being harassed by two boys at another bus stop before Donnie steps in. He lets them know that school is canceled, and Gretchen suggests that he walk her home. Donnie asks Gretchen why she moved here. She explains that her parents had not the best relationship. Well, actually, her father stabbed her mother 4 times in the chest, though she survived. Donnie awkwardly shares some tidbits about his troubled past as well. He's got emotional problems and even set an abandoned house on fire, which landed him a small stint in jail. Before they part ways, Donnie lets her know that he's really glad that school was canceled because it led to them having this conversation.
You're weird.
Sorry.
Yeah, that was a compliment.
Donnie has another therapy session. This time, Dr. Thurman decides to whip out some hypnotherapy. Things take a turn for the sexual as Donnie starts talking about his lewd fantasies.
I think about girls a lot.
Fortunately, Dr. Thurman awakens him from the trance with a clap, ending the session. The police are on the lookout for the culprit of the recent flood, having every student jot down "They made me do it" on the board. Donnie's turn is up and they flag him as a suspect. He's later cornered in the bathroom by one of his bullies, who claims Donnie told the cops he did it. Things escalate as the bully holds a knife to Donnie's throat. Thankfully, he gets off easy. Donnie and the boys are seen cracking open a couple cold ones and arguing about the sexual dynamics of Smurfs. No, I'm not making a joke. Their thrilling conversation is cut short by the sight of the old woman from earlier, almost getting run over. They call her Grandma Death. She's seen walking back and forth, endlessly checking her mailbox. An emergency PTA meeting is held. Miss Farmer is convinced that the cause of the incident can be tied back to the influence of the short story, The Destructors. She berates Miss Pomeroy and basically makes a fool of herself. Meanwhile, Donnie Darko is tripping balls. He speaks with Frank and tries to reach out to him, but a force field materializes, stopping him dead in his tracks. Frank explains that he can do anything, and so can Donnie. He warns him that everyone is in danger. Donnie asks where he came from, and Frank responds,
Do you believe in time travel?
Samantha walks in, asking Donnie who he's talking to. During English class, Donnie shares a poem he wrote that includes Frank. Miss Pomeroy inquires who Frank is, and Donnie shares that he's a 6-foot-tall bunny rabbit. Later, Donnie must sit through another goofy motivational video about fear and love. Miss Farmer's class is tasked with an exercise in which they get up, read a scenario, and then place it on the graph somewhere between the extremes of fear and love. Donnie staunchly rejects this concept, stating that life is not so black and white, and that there's a whole spectrum of human emotion being unaccounted for. His insubordination is punished during a parent-teacher conference. Miss Farmer shares with us the horrid profanities that came out of Donnie's mouth.
He asked me to forcibly insert the Lifeline exercise card into my anus.
Afterwards, Miss Farmer questions Donnie's mother about her aptitude as a parent, and prays that her son does not fall into the path of fear. Thankfully, Donnie has some chill parents, and they buy him a bunch of stuff as a reward for sticking up to that kooky teacher. It's October 10th, and only 20 days remain until the end of the world. Donnie walks up to his science teacher, Dr. Monatoff, and inquires about time travel. He enthusiastically opens up about wormholes, explaining that one could theoretically take a bridge through time. Before wrapping things up, Dr. Monatoff shares a secret little treat with Donnie. He gives him a book, The Philosophy of Time Travel, written by one of the old science teachers at the school. She used to be a nun, and then one day suddenly rejected the church in favor of science. Donnie examines the cover and notices with shock that the author is Roberta Sparrow. Roberta Sparrow is none other than Grandma Death. We cut to a graphic of the book. Chapter 1, The Tangent Universe. Incidents when the fabric of the fourth dimension become corrupted are incredibly rare. If a tangent universe occurs, it will be highly unstable, sustaining life for no longer than several weeks. Eventually, it will collapse upon itself, forming a black hole within the primary universe capable of destroying all existence. At dinner, Donnie shares the book with his family. His parents mention that Roberta is quite loaded and used to be known for her gem collection. Kids used to go up to her house to try and rob her, and she became a total recluse. At his next therapy session, Donnie shares with Dr. Thurman what Roberta whispered into his ear earlier.
She said that every living creature on Earth dies alone.
Donnie sits with his father and some friends as they watch football. He's looking a little loopy. He looks at his father and notices an amorphous water-like blob extending out from his chest. He draws out a path towards the kitchen, and within moments, his father follows said path. A blob begins to form in Donnie's chest, leading upstairs. He's compelled to follow it, entering his father's room and discovering a gun. A mere 12 days remain. We learn a little bit more about time travel as Chapter 2, Water and Metal, flashes on the screen. Water and metal are the key elements of time travel. Water is the barrier element for the construction of time portals used as gateways between universes at the tangent vortex. Whatever that means. Donnie is seen carving pumpkins with Elizabeth. He's carved Frank's face onto his pumpkin, with Elizabeth remarking that it's scary. Donnie doesn't seem to agree.
You think?
Donnie's parents meet with Dr. Thurman. In her professional opinion, Donnie is suffering from paranoid schizophrenia and is experiencing daylight hallucinations. She recommends they up his medication and do more hypnotherapy. While at the arcade with Gretchen, Donnie talks to her about his sleepwalking episodes while Chapter 7 flashes across the screen. The Manipulated Living. They assist the living receiver in returning the artifact to the primary universe. The Manipulated Living will do anything to save themselves from oblivion. Jim Cunningham, the local motivational speaker, hosts a seminar at the school. He takes questions from students and spews generic BS answers about fear and self-love. Donnie takes the mic and asks him how much he's being paid to be here, basically calling him out for being a charlatan. Donnie's escorted out as the crowd of students fervently applaud him. Afterwards, Donnie talks with Gretchen about Grandma Death and her book, The Philosophy of Time Travel. He reveals that he's been having disturbing visions that are accurately detailed in the book. They pay a visit to her house, but no one opens the door. They inspect her mailbox, but spot her watching over them. Frank's voice enters Donnie's mind, telling him to send her a letter. We see an overlay of Chapter 4, The Artifact and the Living, while the jet engine from earlier is shown in the background. Artifacts provide the first sign that a tangent universe has occurred. These artifacts are formed from metal. Miss Pomeroy introduces a new book to the class, Watership Down. She walks by Donnie and whispers in his ear.
Maybe you and Frank can read this one together.
Chapter 6 appears, The Living Receiver. The Living Receiver is chosen to guide the artifact into position for its journey back to the primary universe. They are often blessed with powers such as increased strength and telekinesis. They are often tormented by terrifying visions and hallucinations. Sounds familiar. Donnie is walking home from class when he spots a wallet on the ground. It's Jim's. Frank's voice chimes in.
Now you know where he lives.
Sometime later, Donnie and Gretchen are giving a presentation in class when the two bullies bring up the stabbing of Gretchen's mother. She runs off after class and Donnie chases her. She stops, turns around, and lunges in for a kiss. How romantic. They go to watch a movie, and Frank appears as Gretchen sleeps. Donnie asks him why he wears that stupid bunny suit, and Frank counters.
Why are you wearing that stupid man suit?
He does have a point. Donnie asks him to reveal himself, and he does. Frank is just an ordinary guy. Well, aside from that gaping eye wound, he instructs Donnie to watch the movie screen as an opening emerges.
Have you ever seen a portal?
Frank then tells him to burn it down. Donnie cloaks himself in his hoodie before walking off, leaving Gretchen. He dons a mischievous expression before heading out. Meanwhile, a talent show is taking place with Donnie's little sister, Samantha, leading a dance group. Miss Farmer gives them some words of encouragement before they perform.
If you feel the need to vomit up there, just swallow it.
Back on Donnie's end of things, we see him dousing a house with gasoline before setting it ablaze. After the job is done, he returns back to the movie theater and makes out with Gretchen. Chapter 10 flashes on the screen, The Manipulated Dead. We cut to a brief scene of Donnie and Gretchen awakening from slumber outside. Jim Cunningham's burnt to a crisp house is all over the news. Turns out that sleazy motivational speaker was harboring a secret dungeon filled with child pornography. The firefighters discovered this while putting out the flames. Miss Pomeroy is fired and is set to leave at the end of the week. The girls' dance group wins an invitation to a show in LA, and Donnie's father is away for business, setting the stage for the movie's final act. Miss Farmer, a big fan of Jim's, is convinced the allegations are false. She believes there must be some conspiracy and wishes to testify in his defense. She asks Donnie's mother to take her place as chaperone for the LA trip. Before departing, Donnie's mom checks in on him, but first stumbles upon a disturbing drawing of Frank in his room. She tells him she'll be leaving and that Elizabeth is in charge. If he needs anything, he should call Dr. Thurman. Donnie asks her what it's like to have a wacko for a son. With teary eyes, she tells him it's wonderful and comforts him. We see Donnie handling a letter for Roberta Sparrow and then cut to Donnie's mother and sister departing. Before they head out to the airport, Donnie wishes his mother and little sister farewell. He later visits Miss Pomeroy after school. He sees her packing away her things and is dismayed to learn that she's been fired. He remarks that she was the only good teacher at the school. Before she departs, Donnie asks her why she left cellar door written on the board. She says a famous linguist once said it was the most beautiful combination of words in the English language. Elizabeth receives her acceptance letter to Harvard, and Donnie suggests that they throw a Halloween party to commemorate. She agrees. Chapter 9 flashes on the screen. Insurance trap. The manipulated dead will set an insurance trap. The living receiver must ensure the fate of all mankind. Gretchen arrives to the party, but is worried about her mother, who has gone missing. Donnie takes her upstairs, and they fool around to take their minds off things. Only 6 hours remain. Donnie is seen going loopy as a time channel emerges from his chest. It leads him to the fridge, which has a message that reads, "Frank was here, went to get beer." He tells Gretchen and his two other friends that time is running out, and they have to come with him. They ride out on their bikes to Roberta Sparrow's house. He sees a
Cellar door.
Him and Gretchen enter. She messes around on the piano inside before two people in masks grab them from behind and drag them outside. It's the two bullies that have been tormenting them since the beginning. They were trying to rob the place. A car is spotted driving up, and the kids disperse, thinking it's the cops. Donnie and Gretchen are left behind in the dirt. As the car closes in, it swerves erratically to avoid Roberta, who is standing in the middle of the road, reading Donnie's letter. Gretchen screams out for Donnie before her fate is sealed. The car runs her over. Donnie stumbles to Gretchen's body. She's lifeless. A man in a costume steps outside of the car and looms behind them. He's holding a bunny mask. Frank looks on with sorrow and confusion.
She dead?
Donnie stares him down and shoots him, leaving a gaping wound in his right eye. Roberta lurches up to Donnie and tells him a storm is coming. He takes Gretchen's body with him and drives off to get closer to the newly formed vortex. He watches on and laughs at the absurdity of his situation. A plane flies over the vortex. It's his mother and sister's returning flight. Donnie uses his telekinetic powers to rip off the jet engine, which is the artifact, and then sends it through the time portal back to the primary universe. He gets back in the car and smiles at Gretchen's dead body, knowing that everything's going to be okay. The last 20 days rewind, and Donnie is back in his bed. He laughs about what he thinks was a ludicrous dream, then goes back to sleep. The jet engine crashes in his room, killing him. Chapter 12 flashes on the screen. Dreams. When the manipulated awaken from their journey into the tangent universe, they are often haunted by the experience in their dreams. We see a montage of the different characters waking up with feelings of regret, confusion, and sadness. The aftermath of the accident is a scene of sorrow as Donnie's family weeps. Gretchen rides up on her bike and asks what happened. She locks eyes with Donnie's mother, and they share a wave. I don't know about you guys, but that one made me shed a tear.